And this is one of the reasons why we're in a very difficult period now as we're going into 2012, because many ones who are still so-called conscious are really, at best, semi-conscious. So we've been on this meditation for the last couple of senbets, but it's been like developing over maybe the past senbet, since the last Sabbath and the Shoftim reasoning concerning the Beit Israel, concerning our people, concerning us, all of us. And why, like, black folks, we say, well, what's wrong with black folks? And we had touched on the whole thing about ancestor worship or ancestor honor, and pointing out that our ancestors are Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov. You know what I'm saying? We don't have to really go to Africa to look for our so-called African ancestors unless we're going back to ancient Egypt and going back to past the 400-year mark. But during that last 400 plus or so years, there's a lot of so-called Africans that maybe they don't even know. You know what I mean? It's been kind of so long, really, exactly who did what or so forth and so on. What we do know is that their ancestors are their ancestors, and our ancestors are our ancestors. But we were probing, like, what's wrong with, our people? And then we looked at the Bible and said, well, what's wrong with the Israelites? How come the Israelites were always going after other people's gods? You see what I'm saying? But then behind all of that, and this is where a lot of folks the scholars, the Bible scholars, the thumpers, others, consciousness people, the rest of them, a lot of them have kind of missed the mark on this. Like, look at the Beit Israel, right? Israel was told, don't worship the gods of other people, because Yahweh is our God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You understand? The God of the Trinity. The power, Eli. Like the book of Eli, the book of Haile. When you understand that whole etymology right there, you get the link between Eli and Haile, And then it's just a kind of a duh to really kind of make the real full link with the revelation of His Imperial Majesty. But this all connects with it, the dishonor. Then, now when we get past the ancestor worship or ancestor honor, the Europeans try to say everyone who links with their ancestors deal with ancestor worship, but when you really look at it, it's more like ancestors honor. In some cases, it probably is ancestor worship. For us as Beit Israel, you know what I'm saying? It's ancestor honor. It's to honor our ancestors, because the God of our ancestors said, honor thy father and thy mother, so that thy days be long in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. You see, but we lost the land that the Lord our God gave us because of dishonor to our ancestors. You see, and the continual dishonor of some Negroes who, so-called read a couple of books and learned a couple of things about Africa or Egypt or Kemet, you know what I'm saying? But so they're missing the mark, and then they want to say, well, the Bible is fiction, these people never existed. And then you look at the black folks, it's like black people's history never existed. They want to tie themselves into ancient Egypt, when what they're missing is the Beit Israel prophecy. You see the dishonor of it, you see the link, and of all the peoples in the world, it seems that the Beit Israel, especially in the ancient world, were only people who basically dishonored their ancestors, refused to honor them, and followed in the so-called ancestral worship of other nations. And you see a lot of these Negroes doing the same thing with all their so-called libations, and then trying to spread dispersions on the Bible and the Beit Israel, like after all they've learned, they haven't learned that the Hebrews and the Israelites were black. All these Negroes into black consciousness, somehow they miss that point. Or they'll say, yes, they were black, but they don't make the connection with us. You see what I'm saying? They don't make the connection with black folks. And this is one of the reasons why we're in a very difficult period now as we're going into 2012, because many ones who are still so-called conscious are really, at best, semi-conscious. You understand? Or half-conscious, but if you're semi-conscious, half-conscious, I mean you're half unconscious, so they're really half unconscious. But it really is bringing me to this point of, now we got past that level of the ancestral worship or the ancestor honor link, which was an earlier point that we had went through, like did a flyover and touched on some significant aspects and points. But the Spirit was meditating in me, showing me that the honor, you see, first we flipped it on them because the Europeans talks about Africans and, you know, people into these different so-called, like whenever it's non-European, it's not culture, it's a cult. Whenever it's non-European, it's not honoring their ancestors, but it's ancestral worship. You get overs that right there. That's part of the psychobabble. Now, once you get past that, we focus more on the ancestor honor, how the ancient Israelites dishonored their ancestors and disobeyed and fell out of the covenant with their God, and therefore they lost the land and they went into slavery. That was what was prophesied, and that was what was fulfilled with us so-called black folks and our ancestors. You see what I'm saying? They just want to honor the ancestors, going back to the first niggers that came over here. They don't want to honor their ancestor and really tie it into the biblical prophecy, because why? That's a responsibility there. You see, these Negroes want the glory, but they don't want the responsibility, and this is why a lot of them, you know, go the Egypt route. You know what I'm saying? Which is good on a certain level, of course, for black folks to know, you know, these people are black and great folks, so forth and so on, but, you know, they hold that to the exclusion of really who they be, so at best they're only semi-conscious. You see, they're only semi-conscious. But our problem as so-called black folks is an honor. It's an honor problem. One time I heard a preacher. Well, it wasn't a preacher in that sense. I think it was a preacher, yeah, but you've probably seen this guy on TV that, you know, he takes some of the wisdom out of the Proverbs, and he shows ones basically how to really master their life and, you know, the simple wisdom of God from Proverbs. I know a lot of people say that Proverbs of King Solomon come from Amenemop's Proverbs, and in a sense you're correct, but you're missing a big part of it, because those men back in those times were part of the Ethiopian school. A wise saying is a wise saying is a wise saying. You see, but we're not going to even get into that, the Amenemop and the King Solomon and the Psalms and so forth and so on, and who did what, and really to dispel that lie that King Solomon stole these from ancient Egypt. You understand? Actually, King Solomon, if you knew the truth about King Solomon, he actually ruled ancient Egypt. You see, we don't over that part. But it's the whole thing about the honor. The honor. You know, that this one man on TV has said that, you know, one's future is determined by who they choose to honor. One's future is determined by who they choose to dishonor. One's future is determined by who they choose to obey, to listen to hear, to feel. And also their future is determined by who they choose not to hear, not to listen, not to obey, not to feel. And on the honor point, we as the lost sheep, you know, the once lost but now found, but still there's a lot of our people who are still lost, or at best in a semi-conscious state. Willingly, it seems, on those that really, you know, some of them out there kind of know what we're saying is true. They know in their heart of hearts. We're still talking about these folks that have been teaching this black consciousness, you know, for the last 10 or 20 or more years. And we're not going to say that nothing that of what they're saying has no relevance, because that would be dishonest. That wouldn't be correct. But it's interesting, not that they're teaching us bits and pieces, kibbles and bits of truth, but that they're avoiding the whole root of the matter concerning who we be. And they want to dispel the fact that the only reason why some folks can talk about the Bible and the biblical Hebrew Israelites not being real is because the people that it was given to, you see what I'm saying? They're still not being real. You see, so those who want to say the Bible's not real and these things never happened, such among our so-called lost folk out here in the West, in a sense, what they're saying is true, because the Bible happened, but it's not real to them. You know what I'm saying? So no matter how much they be growing in this so-called pseudo-Afrocentricity and consciousness, their situation still remains the same. They walk around with an ankh in their hand, so forth and so on, and still the situation doesn't get any better. Now people say, well, what about y'all talk about your Ethiopians or your Hebrews, Ethiopian Hebrews? You know, the two groups of black folks, the Ethiopian, Hebrew, Rastafari, and some of the real Rastafari, not the derivative. We're not talking about the derivative Rasta, but the true Rastafari. You understand, that truly hold and protect and keep and practice what the King of Kings, Haile Selassie, teach. They got land. They got land up in Ethiopia. You understand, the Ethiopian, Hebrew-minded diaspora, they got land. If you want to talk about the black Hebrew, Israelites or the African Hebrews, they got land too over in the beachfront property known as the state of Jezreel, or if you want to call it the state of Israel. They got land. You see? Now all these niggas walking around with their arms talking about the most they had is what Dr. York got them down in Eatonton, Georgia, and we all know that's up in dispute. You see what I'm saying? We all know that right there is up in dispute. You understand about what's going to become of that? You know what I'm saying? So now Negroes are saying, listen, we didn't come from Africa. We always was over here in the West. You know, they're deluding themselves. They want to, in a sense, it's correct. Whenever you have black folks, especially this lost sheep, want to claim anyone as their ancestors and want to avoid the Bible, you understand, and everything that's connected in history from the Bible with black folks over here in the West, whenever they do that there, then you know that they're not fully conscious. They're at best only semi-conscious.